mistaken, they were talking about Chico Xavier. And then I looked at my peers and I asked, what is reincarnation? And then they kind of explained it, and I said, is that real? You know, and I remember myself asking, inquiring my parents about it. But at that time, I was a Catholic. I would go to church every Sunday. You know, I studied in a Catholic school. I taught in a Catholic school. So I had a different belief. You know, just later in my life, I met Spiritism. And the concepts were so clear to me and so logic that I kind of, wow, I think that's what it is, you know. That's the real thing. That makes sense. And so it's been studied for a long time. And there are two ways in which it's being studied. One is through the memories of past lives in children. And the other way that they are studying it, it's through something called memory regression of past lives, which is through hypnosis or something. So there are a lot of studies going on for a long time. So in the first group that studies children and memories, Dr. Ian Stevenson has been studying a lot of cases, and he studied over 1,500 children that showed memories from past lives. And he's got a book that tells about it, and he's also a psychiatrist, professor of the Department of Psychiatry and Neurobehavior Sciences at the University of Virginia. And all of these memories, they were proven to be true, because he really investigated the case and he went after what the children were saying through records and places and stuff, and they were all proven to be true. And then we also have Banerjee, okay, is another person that investigates cases, and he has in his book 20 cases that are proven to be true. And Dr. Helen also studies through the regression of memories. She studies cases of reincarnation. Helen, I think it's pronounced Wambach. It's Wambach. Is that how you pronounce it? Wambach. Yeah.
I just couldn't read it.
Wambach. She's a PhD in psychology. And so they're all people studying. And in her findings, she brought these conclusions that are very similar to Spiritism. The first one is that the essential being has no sex, being able to reincarnate in both male and female bodies, depending on the needs that the spirit will have to deal with in the programmed existence. So that's something that we also talk about, and she brings it to us. And then she says the most common reason for rebirth are finishing tasks started in previous reincarnations, correct mistakes made in the past, inner transformation, spiritual development, learn to free ourselves from any attachments, develop virtues such as humility, compassion, and love. And that's all that Spiritism also brings to us. You know, so science is getting there. You know, more and more they are bringing us these cases. Okay. Then in the second group, we have, his name is Witten. So he brings us, he's from Canada, and he brings cases in this book, Life Between Life. Then we have Roger Bulger. He's in England, and he wrote Healing Your Past Lives. So one in Canada, one in England. Then we have the other one, what's his name there? I can't really read it, but let me find the name of the book here. Oh, that's the French guy. Okay, Patrick Drouot in France. Okay, so Canada, England, France. Then we have Voices from Other Lives. That's from Edith Fior or Nederson.
from where?
I don't know. I think he's from the oh no, that's toward Hessen. He's German. Okay, so he's German. And then past lives therapy. That's what's his name? Oh, that's Netherton. Okay, Netherton. He wrote that book. And then we have You Have Been There Before. From that's Witten. So all of these people research past lives in different countries, you know, and they all bring the same concept that you do reincarnate in a different body, either to gain knowledge or to learn more. So according to the German guy, man's task is to evolve and nothing more. And then he talks about destin is the generic term for all sorts of problems that man has to face through his life to obtain the material things to promote his development. That's what he calls destin. And then he said that the problems are the tasks from which man must learn, and not, as many consider, something negative, but the subsidy for self-development, improvement, and evolution. And the so-called free will is restricted to freedom of choice. Okay, so you can choose going right, left, up, and down, you know, and your life is going to develop according to your free will, according to your choices. So if you choose to go the right path or the wrong path, then it's up to you. Okay. So he says that evolution doesn't happen by itself. It's programmed. It's the result of a conflict of energy and a learning process. That's what he says. He says that passive learning, okay, when you decide to be passive through life, is always linked to suffering. And then he says that in this situation, it's often referred to as misfortune, illness, and accident. We curse and feel wronged, blaming it on chance. The responsibility always lies with the one who suffers because he had the chance to choose, but he lacked the will. That's what he said. So sometimes people are in a situation, but instead of doing something to get out of there, they prefer to blame others and complain and feel victims of the situation instead of doing something to change it. And then he said, you are responsible for that. Nobody else is, because you have your free will. You can decide for yourself, unless you are impeded of doing so for mental problems or any other incapacity that you may have. Okay? So, he says that the fate is the result of a chain of lives. So things that you did in a past life may reflect in your today's life. And of course, it's up to us to assimilate the lesson and learn from it or not. Okay. He also said that everything we do in our current existence is registered, you know, in our consciousness. And we also know that because the Spiritism tells us that everything is there, you know, and even if you don't remember, you have a certain notion of what is wrong or right to do. And he also says that we were not created perfect. And the Spiritism says we're not created perfect. We were born simple and ignorant, according to the Book of Spirits. But he says we are capable of improvement, and that's what Spiritism also says, that we are here to evolve. Okay? So reincarnation should be accepted as a natural law. And it is a natural law. Not for everybody, you know. Maybe, I don't know how many people in the world accept reincarnation. We know that ancient civilizations like the Indians accept reincarnation, you know, people in the West accept reincarnation, you know, and reincarnation is very well planned. It's not something that, oh, it's your turn, go. No, It's planned, the family where you're gonna be, the people who you're gonna live with, the country where you're gonna be born. Everything is according to the lessons and situations that you have to face to evolve more and more. So reincarnation is divine and merciful, because God does not condemn us to eternal hell or suffering. We have the chance to redo our paths and become better people. So in these terms, reincarnation is the principle of readjustment of the guilt conscience before the loving laws that govern the universe. So nobody is free of it. You may believe it, you may not believe it, but you're gonna go through it anyways. Right? So some proofs of reincarnation and evidence of reincarnations that are essentially based on innate ideas, things that you have there but you don't know where they come from. The memories of past experiences. I remember the first time I went to New York. That was in 1998. And I really wanted to go to, what's the name of that big park there? I forget the name. The Central Park, yes. I really wanted to go there, and then my father and I walked towards there. So I was on the other side of the road. When I looked at the park and I saw the Central Park, I started crying, like I had been there before. It was such a big emotion for me that I couldn't hold, and tears were coming out of my eyes. So I probably have already lived there sometime, somehow, in a past life, and that all came to me when I was facing it. The other thing is, I'll talk about that when we talk about near-death experience, I'll tell you. Mediumistic communications is another way of proving that this is not the only life, because spirits do come and communicate with us and bring us information. Instrumental transcommunication phenomena, when the machines can communicate with you, or spirits use the machines to communicate with you. In the phenomena of near-death experiences, and that's it. So, the doctrine of reincarnation, which consists in admitting to man many successive existences, is the only one that corresponds to the idea of the justice of God with respect to men of inferior moral condition. The only one that can explain our future and justify our hopes, because it offers us the means to recover our mistakes through new trials. The reason tells us so. So it was the spirits teach us. That's one of the sayings of Kardec in one of the Spiritist magazines. So he brought us that. So we're going to talk about now some reincarnatory cases in the books that we saw before. So the first one is this one here, from Dr. Larry Dossi. He's an MD, and he talks about the experience of Sarah in this book, Recovering the Soul. Sarah had a cardiac arrest, and she was taken into the hospital for a surgery. During the surgeries, her soul left the body, and she was able later on to tell every single little detail of what happened during the surgery, and describe all of the equipments that were in the room, what people were doing and saying. Well, we know that there are many cases like that, but what makes this case very particular is that she was blind from death. She couldn't have described it with her physical eyes. And even for a person that sees, it's difficult to describe a surgical environment. And she was able to do that being blind. And he brings this experience in this book. So that was very lucid, and sometimes doctors try to explain near-death experience as something that is in the brain, something materialistic, and that doesn't make sense because it's not a phenomena linked to the brain. Okay? So the materialistic explanations are not really convincing. So the second case is this one here. Report from Dr. Raymond A. Moody. He has different books, and he brings a lot of evidence. But there is just this one case in the book, Light Beyond, and he says that this little boy that he calls Jason got a new bicycle. And then in the next day, he went to, ride his bicycle on the street, and he was all happy when he was run over by a car. And then right after he was run over by the car, his soul left the body. And he saw the whole scene, when he was on the floor, people were around trying to wake him up, the ambulance came, and he tried to follow people and tell them that everything was okay, and he didn't understand where people were around him and trying to wake him up, and he was awake and he was seeing what's happening. And then all of a sudden he was in the hospital and people were trying to revive him, and he saw this big tunnel of light, and he went into that, and he went up, and he met a few spirits. And then the spirits told him, it's not your time to die yet. You have to go back and live your life with your family. And then in that moment he returned to his body and he was revived. And after that he told everybody what had happened and the scenes and etc. That's case number 2. Case number 3 is Dr. Eben. Third, he speaks about his experience after going through a near-death experience during bacterial meningitis. This guy was he was a neurosurgeon at Duke, Massachusetts General Hospital in Harvard, and he dedicated his life to endocrinology, and he was very static. He wouldn't believe in anything. So after he went through this experience, he said the following: my experience has shown me that the death of the body and the brain is not the end of consciousness, and that human existence continues beyond the grave. And most importantly, it is perpetuated under the eyes of a God who loves us and cares for each one of us, for the destiny of the universe and all beings contained in it. The brain does not produce consciousness, that it is in fact a type of reducing value or a filter that transforms the non-physical consciousness that we have in the higher dimensions into an aptitude limited by the time of our mortal existence. So those were his words after the near-death experience. And then he started believing that there was something else out there that is not in the physical body. So someone that worked for 15 years as a neuroendocrinologist has an experience like that and comes with these conclusions, there must be something real there. So our next case is 2 incidents that happened to a French Hymans, and this professor, Charles Richet, he published a book telling about this guy's experience. So he said that this guy Hymans had 2 different experiences, 2 out-of-the-body experiences. The first one was when he was at his dentist. He was on the chair, and then he got, they gave him anesthesia, and right after they gave him anesthesia, he saw himself out of his body. He saw the dentist working on him, he saw the assistant that was there, he looked at the ceiling, he saw the whole thing, and then he described it. The second time that he had an out-of-body experience. He was in a hotel. He had some heart problems. And all of a sudden, he didn't feel well, and he fell. And then maybe he was there for 1 or 2 hours, and he said he would see his body laying down on the floor. He would see everything, but he wasn't able to do anything. And then people started knocking at his door because they were looking for him, and nobody would answer, and the door was locked, and nobody could go in. And then he saw when the security guard went through his window from the outside up the stairs through his window and was trying to wake him up. And after that, he saw the doctor coming, the hotel manager coming through the door. They opened the door, they took him to the hospital, and he saw the whole thing happening. And then when he woke up at the hospital, he told them the story, and every participant that was there confirmed the details of his story. So that's what he brings in his book. The next case is from Dr. Banerjee. It's a reincarnation in Turkey. That's really interesting, this one, because this Turkish boy, since when he was a year old and 8 months, kind of, he used to talk about a past life. He said he was not who he was, that he had a family, that he missed his family, and he wanted to go and talk to his family. His name was Ismail. Ismail was born in 1956 in the city of Adana in Turkey. And he said that he was not Ismail, he was Abey Suzumus, however you pronounce the name. And he kept saying, no, I have a family, I want to go back, I want to see my family. And the parents were like, they didn't know what to do. They didn't believe in reincarnation. That was not their philosophy. But then, advised by a friend, the father took the boy to the city where he used to live, and it wasn't very far from where they were. And the little boy talked to his previous family, to his daughters. What happened is that when he was a babe, he was he used to have a big house. He was married to a lady called Hatis. Hatis could not have kids, so he divorced her, but he kept taking care of her. She used to live in the same place in a separate house. And then he married Sahida, and he had many children with Sahida. And he employed many workers from another city into his garden. And one day, these employers, for a reason that we do not know, took him into the stable and killed him with a metal rod. So he had a mark on his head in the life that he was now. And then Sahida and 2 other children heard the screams, and they rushed into there, and they were also killed by the man. And then Ismail repeatedly asked his parents to visit Abey's home. He wanted to go there. He wanted to see his family. And then he talked to one of his daughters. And after talking to her for an hour or 2, whatever the amount of time was, she was convinced that the little boy had been her father in a previous incarnation because of the details that he gave her. And then they kept visiting them. The other thing that happened to this little boy was that he knew this guy, Mehmet, and this guy used to sell watermelons and vegetables for him. And then now he was selling ice cream. And he was passing by, and he went to talk to the guy. And he said, do you remember me? And then he looked at the little boy and he said, no. And then he said, I'm a babe. He looked at him, and then they started talking. And then after a moment or 2, he said, wow, yeah, you're really the reincarnation of a babe, because you know all that. And then he gave him an ice cream, and then the little boy's father came, wanted to pay for the ice cream, and then he looked at his father and said, no, Dad, he still owes me money, so you don't have to pay. And then Mehmet looked at him, yeah, that's right, I owe him money. And then he didn't pay for the ice cream. So all of these details, you know, that happen, it's a very interesting case. So the second case, the next case is with Dr. Wormwood. So, like Eben Alexander, she also had her own experience, which made her change her concepts of life. So until 1965, she was a conventional psychologist performing at Mammoth Medical Center in Long Branch in New Jersey. But then in 1966, she spent a short time in something called Quaker Memorial Residence in Mount Holly, New Jersey, and that changed everything in her life. And then she brings the following to us. Upon entering the house, I was just a Sunday tourist visiting the unknown memorial. When I went up the stairs to the upper floor, I started to feel that I was somewhere else, in another time. Upon entering the small library, I automatically went to a bookcase and picked up a book. It seemed that I knew that that book belonged to me. As I flipped through its pages, a scene popped up into my mind. I was riding in a field of tall grass, and that book was stuck on the saddle before my eyes. The hot sun hit my back and my clothes bothered me. I could feel the animal's movement while I was on the saddle, completely absorbed by the reading. The book I was reading was an account of a pastor's experience in the state between life and death while in a coma. It seemed that I knew everything the book contained before I lived through it. So, when she went back to normal, she was really frustrated and she was irritated because she couldn't understand what happened to her. And then she started questioning herself, like why she felt like that, you know, what kind of feeling was that? Was she in another body in a different time? So all of those questions started popping up her head. And then she said, all people carry within them those memories in some way. They can be activated. And then from that on, she started researching it through her patients, doing memory regression. And that's where she came up with those conclusions that I showed you before. It took her 10 years of regression by hypnosis with over 1,000 people, and she reported 1,100 cases of past lives. That's a big research. Okay? And then she says, whether you like the idea or not, managing or not to deal with this disturbing implication, reincarnation is a fact, and we have all lived before. Memories of the Monasteries by Andrew Finkelstein. He brings this little boy too in Tibet. His name was Robin Hu, and since when he was little, he used to speak a different language that his mother didn't understand. And then his mother was like, where did you learn that language? And he said, I went to school. I went to a monastery and I learned it. But then the boy was not even 7 years old yet. He had never been to school in that life, and he spoke a different language. So she was like, she wanted to know and understand what was happening to her son. So she called this person an Asian language teacher to investigate the case. He spoke with the little boy, and he went after the information, and he did find a monastery that had been in school in Tibet. So that proved that he was living a different life in a different body and that he had lived before. And then our last case is Brian Weiss. Everybody must know him. Here in the US, he's very famous. The waiting list to see him is 3-4 years. So he had this patient named Catherine. He's a psychiatrist, and Catherine was having a lot of problems, and he decided to use hypnosis with her. And then when she went into an intermediate stage, she said that his father and his son were with her. And then he was listening attentively to her because she did not know anything about his life. And then she described it how his father died, how his son died, and she also spoke about his daughter. And he was very amazed. How could she know all of that information if she didn't know my personal life? And then that changed his whole career, and he started working with hypnosis, and he was very shocked with the information, and then he changed his career path. He has an institute in Miami. So he was very convinced that Catherine was accessing a different dimension, and that his father's spirits and his son's spirits were with her. So coming towards the end of our lecture, it is gradually that the spirit acquires the qualities that structure pure love, charity, humility, the gift of forgiveness, and love thy neighbor are the path that traces the spirit to moral evolution. And just going a little further with reincarnation, we know that we come here to perfect ourselves, and we know that a lot of times we fail because we have a lot of faults that we have to work on, and sometimes we come to this life to work on one of these aspects, and even so we're not able to because we're so imperfect. And Chico Xavier, in his book The Messengers, he brings some different cases on reincarnation failures, and you guys must have studied it in the Thursday group. So reincarnation cases and failures. The first one I bring is a Celino. He was prepared for 30 years before he reincarnated here on earth. When he arrived here, he failed. He had all necessary material provisions, good mental and body health. At the age of 20, he was called for his mediumistic task, developing the gifts of clairvoyance, psychography, and psychophony. However, he transformed his gift into a way of making money, getting to the point of mocking the gospel of Jesus. So, of course, when he died, his consciousness was blaming him for all of the wrongdoings. He came here with everything he needed and more than what he needed to do good and to help people through his mediumistic talents, but he decided not to. So that was a big failure. The next one we have is Bellarmino. He was an instructor. So taken by the position he occupied, he demanded a lot of himself. It started to attract people of inferior mental condition. He forced millions to take long inroads into the spiritual realm, and from Christianity, he entered the realms of politics. And then Mariana, she had the mediumistic ability on prescribing homeopath and medical herbs. However, she used her husband's opposition to her work as an excuse not to do her work, and ended up giving up the mission she had committed to before reincarnating. So when we are on earth, it's really hard because we go through a lot. We have a lot of challenges, and especially when you commit yourself to do something and to do good and to follow what you believe in, you find a lot of other people that are going to go against it, and a lot of obstacles that you have to overcome to really complete what you came for. So everyone, whatever their particular path of evolution, is called upon to overcome their fears to learn to love. This is the purpose of our existence, and it's the search for unconditional love that induces us to be constantly reborn, putting on without ceasing the human body. Most people are not aware of this. However, many desperately seek the meaning of their existence. So, may we all be able to use well our reincarnation, gratitude to everything and to everyone, thank you for the opportunity, and have a great Sunday.
Thank you. That's awesome. That was very good. Question.
Any questions?
I liked your cases, you know, showing the different cases, cause
Mhm.
you know, I hadn't seen many of those. I don't know any of those books, so I'm not a reader, so I don't read those.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting to see, and we know that each and every day there's cases coming up on this stuff. And we see a lot of different things with reincarnations, with kids coming in and playing pianos like they were
Mm-hmm.
30, 40 years old, or
Exactly.
doing math problems at the age of 3 and 4 that,
Mm-hmm.
that professors are still scratching their heads on, so.
I think we have to keep our minds open, you know, and when we have doubts and if the idea doesn't resonate with us, we should research into that,
Alright,
you know, because if you look for your own answers, you're gonna find, you know, what the truth is. So if you just refute it, you're not doing any good to yourself because you're not learning from it.
right.
So you do have to research, you do have to go after it, and then prove that you're right or wrong.
One observation I want to make,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, Spiritism also teaches that, as many other religions teach us, not that Spiritism is a religion, that we forget our past lives for a reason.
Yes.
Because so that it doesn't impede our progress in this life, that we may, if we know something terrible that we've done in a past life, it may inhibit our growth in this one. Or we may encounter people that we've had these past afflictions with, and that could hamper our development as far as learning to forgive one another
Yes.
and moving on and progressing. So given that, there's also that comes into conflict with the idea of doing hypnosis and other methods to have past life regressions and learn about these past lives. So it seems
Well,
to me
remember-
sometimes it could be damaging.
Remember, nothing happens by chance. Not everybody can access their past lives. Sometimes you can go through hypnosis and you don't get anything. Like, nothing happens without our Father knowing, you know. If you have to remember something, you will remember, either through hypnosis or not. It's something that is for the good, you know. And of course, to go through a process like that, you have to find someone, a professional that is very experienced, and that's really gonna help you out find the answers. Because if you just go through that and you can't handle that after that, then it can be damaging for you. So you have to be able to understand, accept, and a lot of times forgive yourself for your trespasses in other lives. And that's part of the evolution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
It's not going to happen unless everything that happens is because God allows it to happen.
Yeah, it's not by chance.
Or
You know, you don't
reason.
meet people by chance. You're not born or moved to countries that you're not supposed to go to. You know, normally things happen because they have a purpose. Even when you take the wrong road and you are there for a while, stagnant, at a certain point you have to move on, or life will make you move on in the direction that you have to go.
Exactly.
Even if you delay 5, 10, 20 years, but life will move you out of there and put you where you have to be to learn what you have to learn and to go through the experience you have to go through. So acceptance is always the best way, you know, like see the picture as you were out of it and analyze it. That's how I see it.
All right, that makes sense. So I need, if I were to pursue the matter and try to find somebody to do the past life regression, I should not fear that I
No.
would have a result that could be damaging.
No. Yeah, and a lot of times you may not even get anything. Not everybody access them. Yeah. Okay.
Very good.
All right. Thank you.